What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut. And today, we're going to look back at the 2021 MLB season. Now, this video is going to focus on the AL East in particular as we recap each team and how they did through the season. So we'll start off by looking at the Tampa Bay Rays. Now, Tampa may not have been able to win the AL for the second year in a row, but they did have the best record in the American League. It may seem that they did fail this year, seeing as they fell in the ALDS, but that isn't necessarily the case. Tampa Bay saw a ton of their young players continue to develop, while others made their debuts. This year, we saw a pair of top prospects in Wander Franco and Shane Baz make their MLB debuts, while other young players such as Shane McClanahan, Luis Patino, and Randy Arozarena played at a high level for a second year. Those three players are all those players are young, and they're talented. Now, Brandon Lau proved to be this team's best hitter, but Arozarena was not too far behind. Austin Meadows may have started off the year a little slow, but he rebounded well and ended the year with respectable numbers, which is good because he had an abysmal 2020 campaign. Now, a midseason acquisition of Nelson Cruz did add some power to the lineup, although it remains to be seen if he hangs around the team. Kevin Kiermaier is underappreciated by many due to his lack of offensive numbers, but the Rays love him because he has an amazing defensive skill set. Mike Zunino is also great on defense, but this was his best year offensively speaking as well, as he made his first career All-Star game. Now, after Tyler Glasnow went down for the season in mid-June, and unfortunately, it looks like he's going to miss all of the 2022 season after needing Tommy John surgery, we saw Shane McClanahan step up and become the ace that Tampa needed him to be. Now, although the bullpen was needed more, the Rays bullpen did step up. Colin McHugh was a great addition for the team, while other players such as Diego Castillo, J.P. Feyereisen, and Andrew Kittredge all broke out in the pen. While the season ended earlier than many had hoped for, this team still has a very bright future, as the vast majority of those players that I named are still under contract for a couple more years. McHugh is a free agent, but he's probably not going to hang around. Tampa Bay, this team, they still have young players in the minors that are going to get called up very soon. Wander Franco, though, big name, he finally made his debut and he looked good. So, Tampa Bay fans, you may not have made a run this year, but you still have to be extremely, extremely excited. Next, we have the Boston Red Sox. Now, Boston would go 92-70 this year, and they played better than expected in 2021. Many people, myself included, pegged Boston as the fourth best team in the AL East, but they proved us all wrong as they went on to play in the ALCS. Now, Boston, they were carried by their elite, top-tier offense once more. Rafael Devers looked like a future MVP at points this year, while Xander Bogaerts was the team's most consistent batter. He looked amazing as well. JD Martinez had a great bounce-back year after a horrible 2020, while Bobby Dahlbeck and Hunter Renfroe looked elite at times, and they're both under control for a while as well. I think Dahlbeck, going into the season, he wasn't necessarily a highly heralded prospect, but I think he kind of made Boston have to reconsider, getting rid of him prior to the 2022 season. I think he earned a spot on the team. Now, the midseason trade for Kyle Schwarber added another talented, power-hungry bat to the lineup. Meanwhile, Kike Hernandez had another solid year offensively while standing out on the defensive side of the ball. The offense did go through some rough patches, though, and this is what kind of led to Boston finishing at 92-70. If their offense would have been consistent, they probably could have challenged Tampa Bay for the AL East crown. So, this year's the offense was never in question for Boston, but their pitching staff was. Now, Chris Sale, he missed the vast majority of the season due to Tommy John, but he returned in August, and he pitched pretty well upon his return. However, through the whole season, Nathan Eovaldi was the Red Sox best pitcher. And we did see a couple of prospects make their debut this year for Boston. Outfielder Jarren Duran made his debut, and it may not have gone as well as he'd hoped, but he was still decent. Tanner Houck, the pitcher, also made his debut this year. And pretty similar to Duran, he may not have had an amazing season, but he still played pretty well, all things considered. both of these players look to have crucial roles for Boston in the next couple years. While the team will look different as Martinez and Schwarber are both free agents, their main core is intact for another year at minimum as Boston looks to do what Boston does and go for another championship 4 years after winning one and only a couple years after a rebuild. Next, we have the New York Yankees. Now, the Yankees also went 92-70, just like Boston, but Boston had the head-to-head tiebreaker over New York. Thus, Boston finished ahead of New York in the standings. Now, New York did about as well as we expected them to do. Now, as we all knew, they dealt with injuries. Injuries caused problems in the Big Apple. Somewhat surprisingly, though, both Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton managed to stay relatively healthy for once. It was other players that dealt with injuries. Now, Luke Voit completely fell off the face of the earth as he missed the start of the season with a torn meniscus in his knee, and upon his return, he failed to provide the power that New York was looking for and hoping for. So, not the best. In response, they did go and trade for Anthony Rizzo at the deadline, who looked great until he dealt with a certain viral illness. Aaron Hicks struggled this year, and then he ends up getting shut down in May due to a wrist injury. Now, in July, New York decided to replace him with Joey Gallo. The difference between Gallo and Rizzo is Gallo is under control for the 2022 season, Rizzo is not. So, Gallo brought raw power, but high strikeout totals to this team. Probably not the best thing for New York. They probably needed a more consistent bat, but it is what it is. So, Gleyber Torres and DJ LeMahieu both had disappointing years, particularly Torres. They both struggled to hit homers, but Torres just looked downright awful at the start of the year. Torres' play has led to many fans screaming for the Bronx Bombers to sign one of the many star shortstops this offseason. Gary Sanchez did what he does. He hit just above the Mendoza line, but he did add 23 homers. He was one of the better catchers in the league to start the year, but he did kind of cool off a little bit as the season progressed, as you can expect. Still, Aaron Judge was this offense's best player, hands down. On the pitching side, Garrett Cole looked like an ace until the substance ban came into play. After a few rocky starts, he was able to rebound, though. Now, there's a reason he's in the thick of the AL Cy Young race. Is he going to win it? It's possible, but it's probably going to another AL East player. So, Jameson Talon, he may not have been elite, but he played well, and he was a good story. Nestor Cortez looks to have a bright future as well. Corey Kluber, who they signed on a one-year deal, he played well when he was healthy, and he did manage to throw a no-hitter as well this year. Now, in the bullpen, Aroldis Chapman and Chad Green struggled at times. But we did see Jonathan Loaisiga step up, and he had a breakout year. The future is still bright in New York, especially since they can continue to buy all of the free agents that they could possibly want. So next, we have the Toronto Blue Jays, who finished at 91-71. This division was just a death sentence. You had to fight. I honestly think if you put Toronto in any division outside the NL West or the AL East, they probably would be a 100-win team, easy. It's just that crazy. That's how strong this division is. Now, despite missing out on the playoffs, Toronto had a great year. The Blue Jays dealt with some unfortunate injuries this year, but they still played at a high level. On offense, Toronto got an elite MVP-type season from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. However, he's locked in a heated battle with Shohei Ohtani for the AL MVP award. But in any other season, he would probably be the unanimous winner of said MVP. Now, Marcus Semien was signed to a one-year deal prior to the season, and while the move was criticized at the time, it was clear that Toronto made the right call. He had a very strong campaign and looks to get a huge payday this offseason. Bo Bichette took a big step forward in his development this year, while Teoscar Hernandez and Randall Grichuk both broke out. George Springer looked amazing when he played, but he missed more than half the year due to various injuries. Hopefully he can stay healthy in 2022. Now, the darkest spot of this team was third base, as Kevin Biggio had another rotten year. Toronto has to hope that he can turn things around, but if he can't, it's not the worst thing in the world. They still have a very talented infield, even with a potential weak spot at third base. So pitching-wise, I think we could safely say that no one saw Robbie Ray's breakout. Now, I'm a Robbie Ray fan. I do like him as a pitcher. But I thought he was going to remain the pitcher with an ERA north of 4. Not a Cy Young favorite. Kudos to him and the organization. He had an amazing year. He led the league, he led the AL in ERA. So he had a great year. Simple as that. The substance ban didn't seem to hurt him. So you got to give credit where credit is due. He looks like he's going to win the AL Cy Young Award. So very good acquisition for him and the team. Hyunjin Ryu was a steady arm in the rotation, but he struggled with injuries as the season progressed and kind of fizzled out. Jose Barrios was a solid midseason addition as well. Steven Matz started off the year strong, and while he did regress, he still has a bright future and looks like a potential steal from the New York Mets via trade. Speaking of the future, Alek Manoah looked great in his Major League debut this year, while Nate Pearson failed to improve on his 2020 season, although he did miss the majority of the year with an injury. Now the bullpen was a bit of a disaster, as they lost Kirby Yates to Tommy John before the season even began, and Jordan Merriweather missed the majority of the year as well. However, Jordan Romano stepped up when he needed to in a big way, setting himself up as the potential future closer for Toronto. The Blue Jays have a lot to be excited about for the upcoming season. Now lastly, as we all could expect, was the Baltimore Orioles. Baltimore would go 52-110. Now we all knew Baltimore was going to be in for a long season. Is anyone truly surprised? While the team stunk, they did manage to get the first overall pick in the 2022 draft. So there's that. They did beat out the Diamondbacks thanks to a tiebreaker with the worst record in 2019. So at least you got the number 1 pick. Now Cedric Mullins looked amazing this whole year, as he had a career year. Baltimore's offense, however, outside of Mullins, was downright awful. Trey Mancini's return to the field was a bright spot, and he played decently. Ryan Mountcastle and Anthony Santander were decent. Now, Austin Hayes, he had a strong season defensively, offensively, not so much. John Means was the Orioles' best pitcher once more. He managed to throw a no-hitter this season, and he looked flat-out dominant until the substance ban. Now, his no-hitter is interesting. Notably, this is the only no-hitter in MLB history where the pitcher faced a minimum 27 batters, but he didn't get the perfect game due to a dropped third strike. Now what happens is, there's dropped third strike, runner got onto first base, and then they threw him out trying to steal, so that's how he faced a minimum 27. But that was just a very interesting moment. I watched the end of the game, and it was kind of sad. You felt bad for him that it wasn't a perfect game. Now, other than Means, no Orioles starter had an ERA below 5. And only one other pitcher had an ERA below 6. So this offense, the pitching, I should say, was awful. Now, Cole Schuster had a good season as a closer, but, a closer in Baltimore, what are you going to get? On the bright side, reinforcements are finally on the way, as top prospects Adley Rutschman and Grayson Rodriguez should be debuting in the 2022 season. Both of those players are consensus top 10 prospects in the league. Now, how did I have the season finishing out for this division? So I had New York winning the division and being the 1 seed in the AL. They made the playoffs as the 5 seed, but it is what it is. I had Tampa Bay as the 4 seed in the AL, so they did better than I thought. And then I had Toronto finishing as the first team out of the playoffs, Boston finishing in 4th in this division, and Baltimore finishing last in this division. So, all said and done, this division, really, Boston caught me by surprise. Boston caught a lot of people by surprise. They played much better than I think anyone was expecting them to. But you got to give credit where credit's due. Boston did great. Their offense stood out. Tampa Bay, you got a bright future. Honestly, just keep looking forward to it. I know there's some questions about the stadium deal and playing in Montreal for some games, but we'll have to see with that. New York still has a bright future, especially since, like I said, they can buy anyone they want. Toronto, you got a really bright future, and it's going to be interesting if Tampa Bay does end up playing some games in Montreal, because then you'll have a bigger rivalry with them. Baltimore, reinforcements are finally on the way. Adley Rutschman, he's been looking great in the minors. He should be a great catcher. Grayson Rodriguez, he should be a great pitcher, possibly a future ace, if not number 2 behind John Means. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was the AL East recap of the 2021 season. Have a good rest of your day.